We've got some juicy stuff to get into coming off the Joe Douglas press conference, and we've got a Jets insider to break it all down for the very first time on the show. Let's go. Zoinks! But it is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans. Field Yates, baby. Field Gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show. Come on, people. Connor Rogers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor Gosh darn Sycamore, baby. For me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been on.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas. Oh yeah, baby, I'm fired up to bring this guy on the show for the very first time. Brian freaking Costello, baby, of the New York Post, Kaz, and also from what I understand, not the guy who writes the headlines. Let's bring him in. Brian Costello, what's up, brother?
Hey, Paul, how are you?
I'm fired up, Brian. This is Kaz. This is great to have you on the show, and we're coming off the Joe Douglas presser, and there's a lot of juicy deets in there. So let's get to the first thing. Zach Wilson and his camp have been granted permission to seek a trade. Tell us what the heck does that mean? Because it felt like a necessary step in this, the next step rather, in this Zach Wilson being on a new team process.
Yeah, I actually wrote it yesterday, Paul. I didn't do a good job enough of spreading it. That's all you guys saw it because I just put in a story about the combine. I thought it would be pretty common knowledge that it was going to happen. It happened right after the season, so this isn't a recent development. They've had, but it's a step. You know, Joe Douglas isn't going to call 31 teams about Zach Wilson when the agent can seek it out, and this way, Joe doesn't land a deal where maybe. I think he's doing something right by the player, right? Let him try to find the situation he wants the best. How many takers Zach is going to have, I'm questionable about, right? But if Zach is like, hey, I want to play on the West Coast or something like that, let his agent go explore all the West Coast teams that he would like to play for. Or maybe there's a coach he wants to play for, and they can explore that. And then they can come back to the Jets and say, hey, so-and-so is interested. And then Joe can work out the compensation and what would be acceptable. But this has happened before. It's kind of a step in the process of trading a player is he's let the agent talk to teams. You remember the Tyreek Hill sweepstakes a few years ago, right? Drew Rosenhaus, I think, detailed that after the trade as he was talking to the Jets, he was talking to the Dolphins, and that's how it kind of went down.
Yeah, because it's interesting on the Tyreek Hill thing. From what we understand, the Chiefs accepted, quote unquote, the Jets package. Like, okay, that compensation's good. And then whatever the Dolphins ended up offering as well, that's good. Tyreek, you get to pick between the two teams. Is that part of it unique?
Yeah, I mean, that's a superstar player, right? Being dealt.
Okay.
Right? That doesn't happen often where you're going to have that. And the thing with Tyreek, too, is he wanted a new contract. Mm-hmm. So in that instance, there's the trade compensation, and then there's compensation the player gets. Zach is much more straightforward. No one's given Zach a contract. So it's more finding a team that is interested in him and is willing to give up something to the Jets.
And is the compensation part that you just talked about kind of how this process is going to go? Zach Wilson agent, gathers the team or teams, hopefully, I guess we'll see what happens, presents it to Douglas, and then they try to work out compensation? Or do we kind of know at the forefront what the compensation is, and Zach Wilson, his agent, kind of know that as they're talking to teams? Because I imagine that would be a point of interest for them.
Yeah, I think it could go either way, but I mean, Zach's agent doesn't care what the Jets are getting for Zach.
I guess
Wilson,
that's a good point.
So that's really on Joe Douglas to figure that out. They just need if you're Zach's agent, you just need to find somebody who believes in Zach still and maybe liked him coming out of college and feels like the Jets screwed him up and they can fix him and find that team and then present it to Joe. I think it's gonna be. I don't think it's gonna be multiple teams. I think it's gonna be one team, and personally, I think it's gonna be hard to find. I just think Zach has been exposed a little bit too much in his 3 years in the NFL. And I think they're going to have a hard time finding a taker for him.
Where's the line in the sand to eventually, let's just say these teams balk, and then they say, they're going to cut this guy if we don't trade for him anyway, and we could get him just for money. Where's the line for the Jets? Are like, okay, it's March insert, April insert. All right, we got to cut him because like it doesn't make sense for him to be in the locker room if he's not going to be on the team.
Yeah, I don't think he'll ever be in the locker room again, Paul.
Okay.
But I think they could do so the Jets will be back. I don't know the exact date, but it's April. Right. It's usually the week before the draft. They're there for the beginning of the offseason program. They could tell Zach just stay away. Right.
Sure.
You don't have to come, it's voluntary anyway. Just stay away. You don't have to come here and still try to work something out. I think probably the drop dead is probably sometime before the season, before the regular season where they would just cut him, but they could just keep him away for a while. I'm sure, if I'm the Jets, I want resolution on this, but there's financial components of cutting him that I'm sure are not appealing to ownership.
All right, so from what we understand, the Jets have granted permission to Zach Wilson to seek a trade. It does not seem like that was the case for Mecole Hardman, Brian Costello.
Yeah, good segue.
Thank you very much. I'm a professional. We do this. Yeah. So let me get into that very specific piece here. Hardman, accidentally, I don't know what was going through his head on the Pivot podcast when he made it, but it seemed pretty clear that he was talking to the Chiefs weeks ahead of time. Both Brett Veach, who he named, and Patrick Mahomes, that, hey, come get me. And you wouldn't say that after the trade. So Mecole trying to do this backpedal after the fact doesn't seem to make any sense. Douglas had some pretty strong words for it at the presser. What did you think of that?
Yeah, he said it resonated with him, as kind of where he went with it. They're not happy. I've talked to a few people today. They are not happy with Mecole. And, the question, Paul, of tampering is tough because I don't know this. I'm not reporting this.
Okay.
Don't aggregate this. I'm just taking a guess here, right?
Yeah.
The Jets played the Chiefs in week 4.
Yep.
Right. Things were already pretty obvious that it wasn't working out with Hardman, right? He didn't play. Yeah. I don't think he played at all in week 1, right? He barely played against Dallas. He barely played against New England. We were all asking questions about what's going on here. So he's on the field on Sunday Night Football against the Chiefs, and there's, what if Patrick Mahomes is there, Brett Veach is there, and he says, hey, come get me, right? Could that be what happened? Is that tampering?
Yeah.
Did the Chiefs do anything wrong? I don't know, but I think the Jets want to find out. So we'll see. I think it's going to be hard to prove tampering in this case. I doubt the Chiefs were banging down Mecole's door. He wasn't doing much producing. I think, they saw an opportunity to bring back a guy they knew for cheap, and they did it. But, yeah, the Jets are not happy, and him catching that pass to win the Super Bowl,
of course,
was poetic for the Jets. As someone who follows the Jets, I'm sure you were like, oh, of course he would catch it. But what it's done is it's given him this platform where he's on these shows. He would have never been on these shows if he didn't catch that pass. Yeah. So he's on all these shows now. He's getting asked about the Jets. I think he probably went a little bit too far in his comments, but we'll see what happens.
So what could be the results here? Because I've started looking in tampering past, and obviously the Dolphins got whacked pretty hard, but theirs seemed to be a lot more deeper, at a deeper level. They lost a first, a third.
Was that the Brady? You're talking about Tom Brady?
Yes, the Brady Sean Payton, which happened, I believe that was August of 2022 or somewhere in that range. And they lost a first, third, fines, all that, but that was much deeper. But that's the only one that I saw as of recent to look
if you look back, the Jets one that I remember is Revis.
Right. Yes.
They got docked. I can't remember exactly what they got docked. You could look it up though. But he remember Woody Johnson said in January, we'd love to have him back. And Revis was not yet a free agent. These guys are technically not free agents until the new year hits. And I think Woody got fined for that. I don't believe they lost a pick or anything, but I think Woody got hit pretty hard with a fine.
Yeah, 100,000 it looks like is what they're fined, but I don't see any draft pick. Yep.
No, I think it was just a fine. So, because I think Woody misspoke there. It wasn't really nefarious. He wasn't out recruiting the guy. And to me, this one, again, I don't think there was some grand plan. The Miami thing was this scheme to get Tom Brady and Sean Payton there.
Right.
That's going a little bit far. And they had, if I can remember correctly on that, I think Brian Flores was out at that after that, and he kind of said it happened. So I think they had some they had some pretty good
tanking too of the money exchange. Oh yeah, there was a lot of there.
Yeah, I wouldn't think this is going to go very far.
Personally. Okay. All right, so we hear from Joe Douglas. Let's jump to, again, some of these other topics. No tag for Bryce Huff. So he kind of comes out and says that.
Yeah.
No real surprise there from.
No, I mean, the money was too much. Like 20, it's 20, 21, 22,
$21
million dollars, right? You can't do that. And like, I know some people, tag and trade or placeholder. It's just too much money for Bryce Huff. So I never thought that was really a possibility.
So what's the market? Because, a lot of Jet fans, maybe we hype up our own guys, but we're like, oh boy, this guy is going to get paid. Young pass rusher at a primo position, all those things. Like, he's going to get paid. But Connor Hughes was making the rounds on Radio Row, your buddy there on the beat. And he said that, a number he heard from an agent source was like 12 to 14. And that shocked a lot of Jet fans. Like, whoa, okay, that's not a number we thought it was at. And if that's at that, it kind of gives renewed hope that maybe the Jets can bring him back after all.
Yeah, I don't think anyone knows, Paul. He's he is the most fascinating free agent I can remember in terms of value. There's not really the way that agents and teams talk are comps, right? Who's the player comp? It's hard. It's hard. I mean, Carl Granderson was a decent one with the Saints, same agent. And he got 13, I think, last year. But so you pump that up. He's played a little bit more than Bryce in terms of playing time. So, I've heard everything, from 10 to 20 from different people.
Okay.
But I don't think anyone really knows. To me, the key number is like 15 million. I think the Jets would do 15 million. I think if it gets,
that's a Carl Lawson deal.
Yeah. I think if it gets to 17 in there, he's gone. Okay. Right. So does somebody give him, all it takes is one. Mm-hmm. And then the other component of this is with Bryce, talking to him at the end of the year, I got the sense that he didn't love his role in terms of, not playing more than 40% of the snaps. So I think if things are even, Paul, and someone tells him, hey, we're going to play you 80% of the snaps, he's gone. I think he'll go. And I also think there's a thing here too. Like, I was talking about this with somebody yesterday. We were talking about Saquon Barkley, the same thing. Mm-hmm. A lot of times players, they expect the team that they're on to do more than another team. So, like, if the Jets offer something and then another team offers the same thing, they might say, hey, you know what? Like, the Jets didn't value me. They could have got this done a long time. I'm going. Now, I don't know. Bryce, maybe Bryce won't feel that way, but that happens. You talk to agents a lot, and the players just kind of get upset with the team that they're on, feeling that they're undervalued and underappreciated. So this is going to be an interesting couple of weeks to see what happens with Bryce, because he is an ascending player at a premium position. But I also think he fits this defense really well. I'm not sure he fits other people's defenses as well. He kind of lines up at that wide 9 and goes. But all it takes is one team. So, we'll see what's out there. And, I'm curious to see what he lands.
Again, we're speaking with Brian gosh darn Costello, baby. Kaz, the main man here on the program, which we really appreciate. So thank you, Kaz, for taking the time. I'm just going to be blunt. Why didn't Laken Tomlinson work here?
It's a good question.
The scheme, the position, the coach. It seemed as safe as a move you could have made. It seemed like in theory.
It did. I mean, I do think this time of year, it's bad. I'm not a fan of free agency at all. Like, if you've listened to my podcast, I say this to Jake all the time on the podcast. Players are free agents for a reason. They become free agents for a reason. Sometimes it's money, right? Like Bryce Huff, if he becomes a free agent, it's going to be money. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times it's other stuff. And I think Laken kind of got overvalued, and he got overpaid in free agency, and it just it didn't work for whatever reason. They had two different coaches, two different offensive line coaches. Sure. I don't really think with a veteran, the coaching makes that huge of a difference. But I thought he played better this year than last year. To me, it was more just they couldn't justify paying him what he was supposed to be paid and keeping him here. But they now have 3 holes on the offensive line to fill.
Yeah, that's the ballsy part. I don't know what other word to use. By Joe Douglas doing this now, I mean, they've got 3 holes to fill. Like, in theory, you could have tried to keep Laken in your back pocket. I understand the money involved, but you could have kept him back pocket. And if you swing and miss in free agency, you're like, well, at least we got Laken. He's an Iron Man. He started 114 games in a row. If we improve the town around him, okay, that if he's your worst offensive lineman, Kaz, I believe you're the one actually that talks about this common misconception. All fans say, "Ooh, we need 5 All-Pros." You don't need 5 All-Pros to be there. So if Laken's your worst guy, well, you could do worse potentially with that.
I thought they would try to get him to take a pay cut and stay. I'm not sure if they attempted that or not.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it was more just getting their house in order, Paul. Like they've got to get these cuts done and figure out what kind of money they have going into free agency. So I think CJ Uzomah is going to get cut at some point here this week or next week, and just get everything kind of all the ducks in a row, basically. But they have a nice hole now on that offensive line with 3 spots that they have to fill, and maybe Carter Warren figures into that. So, but I think right now they're thinking in their mind they either have to get 2 guards and 1 tackle and play AVT at tackle, or get 2 tackles and 1 guard and play AVT at guard. And to me, if you're looking at the market, it probably makes more sense to get 2 guards and then draft a tackle.
All right, Brian, you've been the Scoop Ski Potato King all friggin' offseason, baby. You've been breaking stories left and right on all things Jetsland. What the hell's the plan on the offensive line? Who are they sniffing around the combine? Everyone starts getting the liquid courage, the drinks dropping back, everyone's sharing intel. They're in Indy. What's the plan? Who are they chasing on the O-line?
I don't think they know yet exactly. I think that happens this week of talking about what the values are and stuff. But to me, I think AVT is going to be a tackle. That's my one takeaway here. Talking to people, I think AVT is going to be the tackle. I think they're going to sign 2 guards and then draft the tackle. I think that's the way they're going to go. The guard market is just better. There's better value there. The tackle market, there's a lot of age, a lot of durability questions, and we all know the Jets have been through so many offensive linemen. I think that's going to scare them away. But that's to me the way that I think they're going to go. And I like the idea of volume. Well, honestly, like just add a lot of guys and let it sort out. Like let Carter Warren compete. If I know David Bakhtiari is going to be discussed, right? If the Packers cut him because of the quarterback, if he was willing to come here for an incentive laden deal that's like low money, and he understands he's not going to walk in and be a starter, go get him and let him compete, because he's good when he's healthy. He's just never healthy anymore. So I to me, the offensive line is volume, bringing a lot of guys. But at the end, I think AVT will probably end up at tackle, and they'll draft their left tackle and sign 2 guards.
And if they go the guard market, what are we talking about? Because there is splashes to be had. There's a lot of big name guards, but there's also other names to your volume point. Do you have a sense on which way they would lean? Is it a Laken Tomlinson splash?
I'll give you one prediction.
Okay.
But you guys are all going to be pissed off on the first day of free agency that they're not doing it enough. I do not think they're going to come out guns a-blazing when the tampering period starts. The negotiating window opens that Monday. What is it, March 11th?
Yeah, legal tampering. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, we'll see. You guys will be losing your minds. 16 other teams do stuff, and if you really look at it, where they've hit in free agency is that kind of second wave of free agency.
DJ Reed,
Tyler Conklin, right? Those are their 2 best signings, in free agency. Morgan Moses was even later, a few years ago.
Right, it was May, June, right?
Yep. Where they've stumbled is coming out of the gate hot, right? And whether it's Lazard or Laken Tomlinson,
Tremaine Johnson,
that predates this regime.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, so I think that'll be in their minds, and I think they're going to kind of be patient and let the market sort out a little bit and being on the second wave, which you guys are going to freak out. And
come on, man. These are not the predictions. You're predicting that we're going to use that meme with the guy in the stick and the Jets. Come on, do something.
There's going to be the Kermit the Frog with the team. Sitting there waiting and waiting. Yes. But I know perspective gets lost when free agency hits, but you guys have to keep in perspective that it's worked out better when they've waited and find some value. So I think that's the way it'll go. The receiver market, maybe that one, they might have to act a little quicker, because that might be a little hotter, but I think offensive line, they might be waiting.
All right, let's go to wide receiver then. Let's get sexy, Cass. What are we talking about? There's some names that are
who's available. I think they got to see who's available, right? I saw Chris Bauer just said today he thinks Pittman's going to stay. One way or the other. So that's the thing with receiver, is just who gets tagged.
So it looks like Mike Evans and Calvin Ridley are 2 names immediately that jump to mind that don't seem to be tagged. Maybe they could get re-signed, obviously, before
I've heard the Bucs are probably going to re-sign Evans. That's the expectation, is he'll sign. But Ridley's a name. And, I've said before, Paul, I had heard a few years ago they weren't interested. I think they're interested this year in Ridley.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think they'll be interested. That we'll see if I think the Jaguars have incentive not to sign him, right, because of the draft pick to Atlanta.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens with him. But the receiver market's going to be pricey though. They're going to have to jump in. It's going to that receiver market is exploding. I saw the Justin Jefferson stuff. Sounds like he's going to get a contract, right? Like he's not being traded. He's going to get a contract there, but that could be $30-something million. So the receivers are exploding, and so that you might get a splash there, receivers. But again, I would remind you, last year your splash was out in Lazard. Everyone was celebrating, and until September, and then they weren't celebrating so much.
Okay, let's talk about one of those splashes, which could happen or might not happen. Everyone's been talking about Davante Adams. What is your current take on the Davante Adams Jets Raiders trade stuff? Because there's the report in the middle of the season that they did attempt to trade for him, and that, hey, we attempted and we're going to attempt again. Like, okay, all right, we hear it. So what's your latest on that?
Yeah, I don't think Davante's going to be traded. I think once they kept Antonio Pierce, it was over. Because I think the Raiders had a decision to make of, hey, are we going to just tear this all down and start over with a new coach and GM? Or are we going to sort of continue on the path we've been on with Antonio Pierce at a GM? And I think they chose the latter. I think by giving Antonio Pierce the job, they were saying, we feel like we're in a pretty good place. They need a quarterback, obviously. And Davante seemed pretty disgruntled in the middle of the season. Right? He wasn't happy with his role, but then at the end of the year, he was singing praises of Antonio Pierce. They hired Luke Getsy as the offensive coordinator, who was with him for 7 years in Green Bay. That seems to be a nod toward Davante to me. So I don't think he's going to get traded. I was the one who asked Telesco yesterday, and he gave he's a Raider quote.
Oh, so it's your fault, Kaz. Nice. That's
I was trying to start the negotiations,
I see. Okay, let me throw two things at you. So first off, you mentioned the quarterback thing. So obviously, right now, Aiden O'Connell. I mean, if that's the guy, maybe Davante Adams like, okay, maybe I'm changing my mind here. But here's the number two thing, right? So you mentioned that the tag game could happen. We heard, again, combine rumors. It seems like Pittman is going to get tagged or something going on there. So he'll be wiped off the board. Higgins is wiped off the board. Yep. If whatever happens, the Jets have targets and free agent wide receiver in these big sexy names, and they don't happen. Could you see this? The Jets come back and go, well, Davante Adams, we go to the Raiders and give a Godfather offer because we didn't get the guys we wanted. It's desperation time. Aaron Rodgers, Davante, and give them an offer that they can't refuse. And they look at where they're at, and Davante would say, well, he's not going to be here probably for the length of the contract anyway. The Jets are off on a crazy thing here. Okay, let's go. Is that something they could do?
I doubt it. Again, and the other thing with Davante, he's making $16 million this year.
Yeah,
so we just talked about the receiver market. If I'm the Raiders, I'm like, that is a pretty good deal because he's a good receiver.
Yeah,
and if these guys are getting $30 million now, it's a pretty good deal. His cap number's higher, but that's his salary. And the other part, Paul, like if you're Woody Johnson, you're looking at this and he said it, like these guys have to win. Are you you're talking about a Godfather offer? So let's say first round picks for the next 3 years, 24, 25, 26.
Ooh, that one's a little rich, but 2025 first,
That's not right. So you're not going to get Davante Adams. You're going to have to give him 2 first round picks to get Davante.
What? But here's the thing,
how much did you get for Jamal Adams?
Whoa. Hey, that's a different story here.
Yeah. A box safety is much more valuable than a wide receiver. Like you guys,
the Seahawks
you said a Godfather offer. So you're saying an offer they can't refuse. So I'm saying 2 first round picks. And I think if you're Woody Johnson, you're reluctant to do that.
I hope he is.
You might be rebuilding this whole thing next year. And you're not going to want to hire a GM and coach and tell them, oh, we traded your first round pick for that 33-year-old receiver that I think his cap number in 25 is like $44 million or something. So he goes from nice value this year, the next year he's going to need to rework his deal. So I think the Davante ship has sailed.
The logic that I just see is so the Raiders traded for to the Packers deal originally. They gave up a 1 and a 2. Davante is now 2 years older, so it's got to be less than that, right? Does that make sense? I don't know.
Not for a Godfather offer.
Apparently
1 and 2 is something Raiders could turn down. So
I guess that's true.
Yeah, I just don't think they're going to be interested in trading him. Maybe at the deadline, if things go really south, he'll be on the market, but I don't think they're going to trade him before the season.
Okay, the AVT stuff I found very interesting from Joe Douglas. First off, I don't know if hesitant's the right word. I'll let you read into it what you will. That there is the 5th year option a slam dunk? Is it not? The way he answered it, yeah, we'll address that after the draft. Is that a formality? What's going on there in 5th year option?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would think it's a slam dunk, but I guess the injuries call into question that.
Naturally, sure.
Sometimes with Douglas, he doesn't want to say if they haven't told the player or the agent, like he wouldn't tell us first. So that could be it. But I go back to Quinnen Williams when his 5th year option was up. Douglas said it at the combine.
Yeah,
so that to me is always the barometer. It was like, okay, it was a slam dunk with Quinnen, and he had told the agent already. I know that, so he kind of felt comfortable telling us. So that could be just it. It could be a formality that he hasn't just told the agent yet. They have until it's like May, the first week
May
of
2nd.
Yeah, they have to then. So he might just say we're going to do it. We'll tell him then and wait. But I think they have to pick that option up, even though he's been injured. He's a good player when he's healthy. And to me, with AVT, looking at the injuries, they're two kind of freakish season-ending injuries. Yeah. It's not like he has a bad knee or a bad shoulder that you're like, oh man, this is going to be a chronic problem for him. He tore his Achilles, tore his triceps, and he's, I think I'm not worried about him being injury prone.
You mentioned that your prediction, based on everything that you're hearing at the combine, is he plays tackle. Do you think the Jets already know that and they're just playing coy with us, saying we don't know where he's playing?
No,
he's going to play at one position.
No, I think it's based on how things play out in free agency and the draft, right? I think if they go out and land 2 guards, he's playing tackle. I think if they end up going, you know what, the guard market got hot, like it got the money's way more. Let's sign that tackle. Let's sign Tyron Smith or whoever.
Sure.
If they do that, then he's going to be. I think he'll be a guard. I think that the draft clearly says tackle, right? They have to draft the tackle.
Yeah.
So I think you're operating there, but I think they need to see how free agency plays out, and you'll know. My prediction, Paul, is they'll tell us at the owners' meetings what position he's playing, and it'll be based probably on what happens in free agency.
So I'm assuming, based on every interview I've seen you've done recently, if you had to guess right now, the 10th overall pick will be whatever offensive tackle is best on their board.
I do think so. I mean, I guess if those top 3 are all gone, maybe it gets something different. Like you take the 4th best tackle, that maybe not. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think one of the 3 guys will be there for them at 10. Just now on February 28th, we'll see if things change. But to me, you have to take a tackle. It's just such a glaring hole, and obviously they whiffed on it in 2020 with Mecole, and they got to fix it.
Is Brock Bowers at all on the board? Mel Kiper, his latest mock today, had him in. Yeah, there's been a few people buzzing about it.
What will the reaction be if the Jets take a tight end, Paul?
I'm going to be honest. For me, normally, right, the Kyle Brady's of the world, and go back that far.
I know what Joe Beningo's going to say.
Yeah, that's for sure. But to me, because I just feel like the investments have to be predominantly offenses offseason, and again, what the draft people say, I'm not some sort of draft expert. They say he's this quote unquote generational guy, and he's a pass catcher, and Aaron Rodgers will get the most out of insert pass catcher. So that part of it's like, well, if Rodgers has another guy to throw to, okay, good news for me.
Yeah, I'd be reluctant. I mean, I do think they have to consider it, but I'd be reluctant. I just think tight end is a position you can find second day. You can get some good ones. I think we've seen that recently. And I think it's just so much more important to fix the offensive line right now. So if the top 3 are gone, would you consider Bowers at 10? Sure. But I'd also consider trading down at that point too. And seeing if, you can slide down and get a tackle.
How likely is a trade down? We've never seen that from Joe Douglas in the first round before.
Yeah, I don't think they're desperate. Like, I know some people have said, are they desperate to get in the second round? My understanding is they are not. They feel pretty comfortable with where they drafted in the 3rd round, that they can still get a starter. Mm-hmm. So I think their goal is to come out of this draft with 2 starters, and they feel like they can do that with what they have. But like, if a scenario plays out, I think they would consider. They've considered moving down in the past. It just hasn't hit the right way. But I think if all those tackles are gone, you can see them possibly moving down.
What about the other way? Trade up. I know they don't have a lot of assets, but people have floated out the Joe Alt slips, the Fashanu slip, the surprise, maybe one of those top 3 receivers slips that all of a sudden they get a little frisky.
Yeah, I think it's unlikely, but I wouldn't rule it out. I do like this is obviously a do or die year for Douglas, and if he feels like Joe Alt or whoever is way better than the other tackles, and you can move up to 7 or 8 and get them. I can see a scenario where they do that, but like you said, they don't have the second round pick this year to deal. I think trading up for anything other than a quarterback can be a risky proposition. So I would think it's unlikely, but I wouldn't rule it out completely.
Okay, a couple of quickies before we get Kaz out of here. What is your prediction for the first move that the Jets will make in free agency? It is what?
The first move in free agency, I think it'll be at receiver. I don't know who it's going to be. I'll go Ridley if you put a gun to my head, because I just think he's the most logical guy to make it there. Because I do think with what Ballard said today, Pittman's going to be off the board. I think Evans is going to be off the board, like I said. So I'll say Ridley, in free agency.
Can we get any go full Tannenbaum here and get some crazy trades? Antonio Holmes, Braylon Edwards.
You guys now see? Yeah. Do you guys now see what covering Mike Tannenbaum was like? He's suggesting Russell Wilson.
Oh yeah, some of these have been a little questionable.
I love Mike, but when he was the GM, you basically couldn't rule anything out because anything was possible with him. Because I can remember Terrell Owens had a workout or something, and it was he was pretty much done at that point. But it's the Jets could do it because you never knew the Tannenbaum. I mean the trade market is impossible to predict, right? Who had Tyreek Hill getting traded?
Yes,
that year, nobody, because it comes out of nowhere. Who had Stephon Diggs getting traded until he started tweeting, and then the wide receivers one to watch because those guys are a little different, and who knows what happens there? I mean, the Jets know it as well as anybody. Braylon Edwards became available because he got into a fight at a nightclub, and Antonio became available because he was smoking weed. And guys sometimes shake free, but it's hard to see it coming. So maybe there will be a trade that we don't no one's predicting. But I think it's going to be tough for you're going to have to get a value like they got with those guys or Brandon Marshall. I don't think it's going to be a trading first round pick scenario to get a wide receiver.
And what about wide receiver? Seems like the sexy thing to talk about, but what about offensive line? People have floated Cam Robinson of Jacksonville or Garrett Bowles of Denver, where it's almost a salary dump on their side, but creative ways for the Jets to fill offensive line holes.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if people trade offensive linemen. They're just so hard. I mean, look, if Paul, we're talking about with the Jets, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Giants are talking about offensive line. I was talking to a guy who covers the Ravens. The Ravens have to get 3 new offensive linemen this year.
Wow. Yeah.
You look around, how many teams have really good offensive lines? Even Kansas City, who won the Super Bowl, they have 2 weak tackles, right? They were pretty good up the middle, but they have 2 weak tackles. It is so hard to find these guys. I don't see them trading. I remember we went through this with the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And Ezra Cleveland, people were acting like he was John Hanna, and the Jets had to go get him. I'm like, what are we talking about here? So I'd be surprised if offensive linemen are traded.
When are we going to see the Thomas Morstead, Greg Zuerlein package deal? Okay, yeah, they're resigning. Why not just handle business? Isn't that a very easy I've done a lot of interviews with Morstead. He would love to come back. Isn't that I know it's a low priority thing, but just we've got a couple weeks before there. Bring everybody in, boop, 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 line them all up. Okay, well, that one's checked off the bucket list. What are we waiting for in those guys?
Good question. I don't know. I mean, I do know there is a process to this whole thing of getting approval, on the money and all that, making sure they have their budget set. And obviously they just found out the salary cap Friday, which changed things. So I think that was kind of the first step towards setting the budget. And I would think Zuerlein and Morstead will be done in the next, I would think next week or maybe next weekend before things really heat up, but who knows? I said to someone today, if you guys screw that up and don't sign those 2, it's going to be the biggest freaking storm because you finally got it right at those positions. You can't screw it up. You got to get them signed. I think they know that, and I think it'll get done, but I'm not sure exactly when.
All right, let's end with this. You've had a bunch of conversations with Woody Johnson, Kaz, whether NFL honors or what have you. What has been kind of your temperature here? You've covered the team for a very long time, so you've seen a lot of different iterations of Woody Johnson in his emotional state as things have been going on. It seems like things have picked up a little bit. Is that over the top? Am I being dramatic here?
No, I mean, the last time I saw with the honors, I don't know honors what he said. The last time I saw him that emphatic was probably the end of the 2008 season.
Sure,
right?
Favre, Mangini.
Favre, Mangini. He was really disappointed at the end of that year. He really felt like they screwed that up, and obviously he fired Mangini. So that's probably the last time I saw him like that. Though he's usually a little more tempered, but he was hot. Like he gave us a lot of stuff that night, obviously to work with. And so I think what you have to keep in mind is he's 76 years old, right? So he's held the team, 24 years?
Yeah, that's right, 2000. Yep.
He was 52 years old when he bought the team. I don't know how old you are, Paul.
I am 30, but it sounds 30. Like Woody is closer to death than birth. Yeah, I hear you.
Right. So, I think when you're 52, you're like, all right, all this is still in front of me. I'm okay. Like you're 30, 52 might sound old, but 52, I'm 47. 52, okay. You feel like, okay, there's a lot of time left, a lot of stuff. At 76, you start going, uh-oh. Like this can't be a 10-year plan here to get to the Super Bowl. Like we need to get there pretty soon. So I think that's part of this with Woody. And I think he's tired of the losing, just like the fans are. There's a lot of elements of Woody that's much like a fan. So I think he's fed up, and they got to win. Like he said it, they got to win this year. I don't think there's any free pass anymore. I don't think anything can happen where these guys are like, okay, you're coming back even if you miss the playoffs. I mean, I guess there's some crazy scenario. Maybe they go 11-6 and miss the playoffs or something like that. But to me, it's playoffs or bust.
So, to quote the famous movie Austin Powers, so what does it all mean, Basil? Okay, Woody Johnson is, super pissed. What does that lean into extra aggressiveness this offseason? You got Aaron Rodgers, you have this very short window, and to maximize it, that the future, you wrote an article about, you have to think about the present, but also the future, because there is the Sauces and Jermaines and Bryces and everybody. That are coming up here. So how do you balance that line? Because Woody wants to go, but if you push the pedal all the way to the floor, you could F up some of those scenarios here in a year or two.
Yeah, I don't think you win by doing that, honestly. Like, tell me the team that went out and signed 1 million free agents and it worked. Like, I go back to Washington.
Dream Team Eagles, right?
Eagles. Like, it doesn't really work. Like, it's not. So I don't think you should argue like, oh my gosh, he needs to spend all this money. I think he needs to be smart. I think they should invest in Bryce Huff, right? He's a young player, good player in the organization. Don't let him walk out. Invest in him. And he's got to have trust in Douglas to go execute the plan and give Douglas what he needs to execute the plan. But I don't think that just translates into like, spending all this money. He went for it last year with Aaron Rodgers. Like that was a big investment. So I think they have to, supplement that investment. But to me, it's not like, oh my gosh, they're going to come out and spend. I think they spent more money than the other team last year, right? They were the highest spending team.
Right. Yep.
I don't think they're doing it already. So for me, it's not like, oh my gosh, they got to come out and spend all this money. They got to be. Douglas has to nail this. He's got to fix the offensive line. He doesn't need 100 things. Like he needs to fix the offensive line, get another weapon in there, and backup quarterback.
Yeah, who the hell is the backup quarterback? Who's that going to be next year?
I go Jacoby Brissett is my prediction.
Okay.
But I think any of those guys, that you hear, those veterans, I think any of them are a possibility. We'll see. The question there is who has an opportunity to go somewhere and start, or be the bridge quarterback for a team that's drafting one. Like, does Tannehill get to go to Chicago, and if they're drafting one, or Washington or New England, or does Brissett do that? Does Gardner Minshew do that? But I think it's going to be one of those big names.
Do the Jets struggle in that department? Is that something I'd imagine that'd be a very high priority, a very early in free agency decision? But with some of the things you mentioned, maybe that's more difficult to pull off.
Yeah, I don't think it's early in free agency because there's kind of a tier, like a hierarchy. Like even the backup quarterback market is not going to be the day one thing. But I don't think that's a problem. I think where they struggle is you're coming to play behind Aaron Rodgers, right? And if you're a veteran, you're going, okay, I am not going to play unless he gets hurt. Right. There's no scenario where you're going to get to play. But if you're a veteran and Pittsburgh calls. Okay. Kenny Pickett might stumble, right? Like that was sort of like with like Joe Flacco. I know he's a touchy subject, but when Flacco left the Jets after 2020, right? After that year, and he went to Philadelphia. Remember, he signed with Philadelphia in 2021.
And then they traded for him.
And it was like, well, why did he go there instead of the Jets? Like, come back to the Jets. And the Jets wanted him. But he felt like Jalen Hurts at that time was still establishing himself. Jalen Hurts might stumble after 4 games and he could play. He knew the Jets were drafting a quarterback at number 2, and he probably wasn't going to play. So I think that's the challenging part for the Jets right now is Aaron Rodgers is locked in. It's really an injury situation is the only way you're going to play.
Kaz, you've had the temperature on all this coaching stuff. You've been breaking those stories, okay? You're our Adam Schefter baby, left and right. So I ask you, Kaz, what's this veteran overseer coach thing? I heard Connor Hughes maybe float Arthur Smith in an interview this week as a guy they may have been looking at, which was kind of interesting. Obviously, he gets a straight-up OC job, so that's not something I'm sure he would have considered. Are you hearing any names? Who is this guy that seems like a very important hire for the Jets to be had?
I don't think it's happening, Paul. I think they
don't hire anyone.
Yeah, I don't think they're hiring anyone. I think the staff is set. I think they explored it. I think they looked at some guys, but the guys had some OC options that they explored. I don't know if Arthur Smith was one of them, if Connor said that. Like that's, I trust Connor's reporting. But I think they explored it. I think they talked to some guys, but I think at the end of the day, they decided not to do it. So I think the coaching staff is set as it is right now, and we'll see what Aaron Rodgers can do with them.
Okay, well, Kaz, thanks for the time. Very gracious with your time. We really appreciate it. I guess I'll give you one last opportunity. Any juicy nuggets, anything you're hearing Jets-wise that we did not address during this conversation, you could give us a little something.
I think we covered everything. We covered everything today. We'll see. Well, there'll be more after the combine and next week and into free agency.
All right, Kaz, enjoy Indianapolis. I hope you St. Elmo's and all that jazz, all that stuff over there. Hope you have a good time there, pal.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
All right, there he is. Brian Costello. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Take care.